Room 714. St. Catherine's Medical Center. 11:52 p.m. I had been on my feet for 16 hours. 16 hours of holding hands that gripped too tight, checking IVs that beeped too loud, and smiling at families who looked at me like I was the last human thing standing between their loved ones and the void. That's what nursing is. You become the wall. The quiet, steady, invisible wall between life and everything trying to take it. General Robert Harris had arrived that afternoon by ambulance. Heart attack. The massive kind. The kind the paramedics described in the elevator with a kind of grim reverence that told me they weren't sure he'd make it through the night. He made it. His wife didn't arrive until 2 hours later. Stacey Harris walked into St. Catherine's like she owned the building. Blonde hair blown out perfectly despite the emergency. Tailored coat that probably cost more than my car. Heels clicking against the hospital floor with the kind of deliberate rhythm that said, "Everyone in this room should be paying attention to me." I was at the nurse's station when she passed. Looked up. Made eye contact for exactly 1 second. She looked right through me. That happened a lot. I was used to it. Black woman in scrubs. Background noise. Furniture that breathed. 20 minutes later, I was in room 714 updating the general's medication chart when Stacey appeared in the doorway. "Who authorized this dosage change?" Her voice was a blade wrapped in silk. I looked up from the chart. Stayed calm. Professional. 12 years of nursing had taught me how to absorb hostility without flinching. Dr. Drake adjusted the medication protocol this evening based on. I didn't ask about the doctor. I asked who authorized it. She stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something expensive and aggressive. "Because my husband's care is not being managed by some." She stopped herself. But the word hung there anyway. Unspoken. We both heard it. Something inside me went very still. "Mrs. Harris," I said, keeping my voice even, "I understand you're worried about your husband. But the medication adjustment was ordered by the attending physician and is medically." The slap came so fast my brain didn't register the motion. Only the impact. Open palm. Full force. Across the left side of my face. The sound cracked through the sterile room like a gunshot. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't raise my hand. Not because I wasn't angry. I was furious. 12 years of quiet, burning, swallowed fury rising up in a single volcanic surge that made my vision blur at the edges. But I didn't move because I knew something Stacey Harris did not. I knew exactly who I was. And I knew exactly what was about to happen to her. Stacey smoothed her jacket. Adjusted her hair. Looked at me the way you look at a piece of furniture you've just shoved out of your path. "Know your place," she said. Then she turned and walked back to her husband's bedside like nothing had happened. I stood there for 3 full seconds, feeling the heat bloom across my cheek, feeling the fury and the calm exist side by side inside my chest like two animals in separate cages. Then I walked out of room 714, down the corridor, into the supply closet, closed the door, and pulled out my phone, not to cry, not to call a friend. To call Min Jae Kim, the man I was engaged to marry in 11 days. The man who ran the most sophisticated criminal organization on the West Coast. The man whose enemies didn't end up in hospitals. They ended up nowhere at all. I pressed his number. He answered on the first ring. He always did. "Gloria?" His voice, calm, warm, the voice that had whispered promises to me in the dark just 3 nights ago. "What's wrong?" I told him. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then Min Jae Kim said something I would remember for the rest of my life. He didn't say, "I'll destroy her." He didn't say, "She'll regret this." He said, "Don't do anything. Let me handle it." And what happened next? What Min Jae Kim did to Stacey Harris over the following 10 days. Was so devastating, so methodical, so perfectly surgical. By the time it was finished, Stacey Harris didn't just lose everything she had. She lost everything she thought she was. A general's wife just slapped a black nurse in a hospital and had zero idea that nurse was the Korean Mafia boss's fiancée. And Min Jae Kim didn't threaten her. He didn't yell. He just said, "Let me handle it." Subscribe right now, because what handling it looks like when a man who controls information networks across 3 states decides someone has touched what belongs to him is going to be the most coldly devastating 10 days in Stacey Harris's entire life. She has no idea what's coming. My name is Gloria Honnett, 33, black. Natural hair I keep pulled back because hospital regulations don't care about aesthetics. Hands always slightly dry from sanitizer. Eyes that miss nothing. 12 years as a registered nurse. I started at 21, fresh out of nursing school, carrying student debt, and a determination to help people that was the only thing keeping me standing. I wanted to be a doctor once. Back when I was 16 and believed ambition could open every door. It couldn't. Doors have locks. Not everyone gets the key. So, I became a nurse. And I learned something medical school never would have taught me. Invisibility is the most powerful position in the world. People see what they want to see when they look at a nurse. Competence. A uniform. A function. Someone who checks vitals and adjusts IVs and disappears back into the background when the work is done. They don't see a person. And that invisibility, that assumption that Gloria Honnett is just the nurse, just the background, became the foundation of everything that followed. I should tell you about Min Jae before this story goes any further, because understanding him is essential to understanding what happened after Stacey Harris's hand connected with my face. Min Jae Kim is 40 years old, Korean American, son of immigrants who built a dry cleaning business and worked themselves nearly to death so their son could have what they never did. Min Jae took those opportunities and built an empire. Not the kind you see in movies, no flashy nightclubs, no dramatic gunfights. Min Jae's power is invisible. That's what makes it terrifying. He controls information. The kind governments, corporations, and wealthy individuals would pay fortunes to bury. Medical records, financial histories, digital footprints, the quiet details of people's lives they believe are private. He doesn't blackmail. Too crude. Too visible. Instead, he simply possesses knowledge. The people who know he possesses it adjust their behavior accordingly. They cooperate. They step aside. They make choices that benefit Min Jae's interests. Not because they're threatened. Because they understand, with perfect clarity, that he knows things that could unmake their entire lives. He's never needed to use that knowledge. Not once. The threat is enough. I met him 14 months ago. Not through any network that defines his world. I met him because he was sitting on a hospital floor at 3 a.m., crying. His mother, Soo-yeon Kim, was a patient at St. Catherine's. Lung cancer. Stage 4. I was her night nurse. Min Jae arrived on her second night. Sat in the corner of her room like a man trying to hold himself together through sheer force of will. I didn't speak to him that first night. Let him exist in his grief. On night 3, I found him in the corridor outside his mother's room. Sitting on the floor. Suit jacket off, tie loosened, face in his hands. I sat down next to him. Said nothing. Just sat. We stayed like that for 37 minutes. Then he spoke without looking up. She asked me today what I do for a living. The real answer. Not the cover story. He swallowed. I've been lying to her for 15 years. And what did you tell her? The truth. For the first time. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. Devastated. The eyes of a man who had just handed someone the power to destroy his entire world. She said, his voice broke. She said she already knew. Mothers usually do. Did she know because she's my mother? Or because I wasn't as careful as I thought? Does it matter? He looked at me. Really looked, the way people almost never look at nurses. She said she was proud of me anyway. Then hold on to that. His mother died 9 days later. Gloria was her nurse until the end. Min Jae found me afterward. He thanked me.
I said it was my job.
He said it was more than that. He was right. We've been together ever since. He proposed 3 weeks ago. No elaborate setup. Just dinner, just the two of us. Just Min-jae looking across the table and saying, "Marry me." Not because it's strategically useful. Because you're the only person who has ever looked at me and seen a human being instead of a function. I said yes. We were to be married in 11 days. Then Stacey Harris put her hand on my face. And everything changed. I didn't leave the supply closet for 11 minutes. Not because I was crying. I wasn't. The tears would come later. At home, in the shower, where no one could see them, and I could afford to fall apart for exactly as long as it took to put myself back together. I stayed in the supply closet because I was thinking, calculating. Stacey Harris had just assaulted a medical professional in a hospital. On camera, there were security cameras in the corridor outside room 714, and the door had been open when she struck me. The incident report I'd file would reference those cameras. The footage existed. More importantly, Min-jae now knew. I'd called him, told him everything. And Min-jae Kim, a man who had spent his entire adult life building systems designed to destroy people through information, had gone very, very quiet. That silence terrified me more than any threat could have. Not because I was afraid of what he'd do to Stacey. Because I was afraid it wouldn't be enough. I filed the incident report at 12:30 a.m. clinical. Factual. Time, location, description of the assault, names of anyone who might have witnessed it from the corridor. I noted the security cameras. I noted the mark on my face. Then I went back to work. Because that's what you do. You absorb. You document. You continue. Rachel found me in the break room at 2 a.m. She took one look at my face, at the bruise blooming purple and red across my left cheek, and her expression shifted from concern to fury. Who did that to you? Patient's family member. Gloria. It's documented. Report is filed. I'm handling it. Rachel studied me with the particular intensity she reserved for moments when she knew I was hiding something significant. We'd worked together for 4 years. She knew me well enough to recognize the difference between Gloria is tired and Gloria is carrying something enormous. Okay, she said quietly. But if you need anything, I know where to find you. She left. I sat alone in the break room, pressing a cold compress against my cheek, and thought about Stacey Harris walking back to her husband's bedside like she hadn't just committed assault. And I thought about what Min-jae was already doing. By 6 a.m., Thomas Seo had compiled a complete file on Stacey Harris. I didn't know this at the time. Min-jae told me later, after the fact, with the kind of understated precision that was his signature. Thomas had been working through the night. By dawn, he had Stacey's financial records, her social connections, her digital history, her relationship networks, her vulnerabilities. Min-jae reviewed the file over coffee in his apartment while Gloria finished her shift. She's not what she appears, Min-jae said to Thomas. Not surprised, he was rarely surprised by anything. Just noting it. Filing it. The general's finances are significantly more complex than a military pension should support, Thomas replied. Real estate holdings across 4 states. Investment accounts that don't trace back to any legitimate source. And Stacey has direct access to at least 3 of those accounts. She knows about the money. She knows about all of it. There are communication records, encrypted but not encrypted well enough, between Stacey and a financial advisor in Zurich. She's been moving money for him for at least 2 years. Min-jae set down his coffee. The general is connected to something larger than domestic arms dealing. Significantly larger. The financial trail leads to defense contractors, foreign governments, and at least 2 shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. And the heart attack. Thomas hesitated. The first time Gloria had ever seen him hesitate at anything. Dr. Drake's preliminary notes on the general's chart include a notation that the cardiac event doesn't match the patient's risk profile. He flagged it internally, but it didn't escalate. Drake suspects something. He just doesn't know what yet. Min-jae looked at Thomas for a long moment. Then, don't touch Stacey Harris. Not yet. Not until Gloria tells me not to. Thomas raised an eyebrow, the only visible sign of surprise he ever showed. You're waiting for Gloria? Gloria sees things I don't. Always has. Min-jae picked up his coffee again. Set up surveillance. Passive only. I want to know everything Stacey does over the next 48 hours. But nothing happens until Gloria decides what happens. Gloria came home at 7 a.m. exhausted. Angry. Still carrying the residual adrenaline of the night's events like static electricity under her skin. Min-jae was waiting in her apartment. He had a key, had had one for months. He was sitting on the couch with his laptop open, Thomas's file pulled up on screen. He stood when she walked in, crossed the room, gently, so gently, turned her face toward the light. The bruise was ugly, dark and swollen, the skin beneath it hot to the touch. Something moved behind his eyes. Something ancient and cold and dangerous that Gloria had only seen glimpses of before. The thing that existed underneath the man she loved. The thing that had built an empire. Don't, she said quietly. Don't what? Don't look at me like that. Don't let this make you angry in a way that makes you reckless. I'm not reckless. You're furious. I can see it. She took his hand, held it against her unbruised cheek.
Min-jae.
I need you to listen to me before you do anything. He went still, the way he always did when Gloria needed him to, completely, deliberately still. Listening. I know about General Harris, she said. His expression shifted. What do you mean? And Gloria told him everything. I've been investigating for 14 months. Min-jae didn't interrupt, didn't move. Sat perfectly still on the couch while Gloria laid out everything she'd found. The patterns, the documentation, the 43 patients whose cardiac events didn't match their medical histories. When she finished, the silence stretched for a full 10 seconds. Then, you've been running a parallel investigation. For over a year. Without telling me. Yes. Why? Gloria held his gaze.
Steady. Direct.
The way she'd learned to be direct with him from the very beginning. It was the thing that had hooked him that first night on the hospital floor. Everyone else in Min-jae's world danced around him. Gloria never had. Because you would have stopped me. Told me it was dangerous. Pulled me out of St. Catherine's. Wrapped me in protection and put me somewhere safe. She paused. And I needed to be in that hospital. I needed access. I needed to be invisible. And the moment you knew what I was doing, I stopped being invisible. You were protecting the investigation. I was protecting the evidence. 43 people, Min-jae. 43 cardiac events that shouldn't have happened. And I think, she took a breath. I think General Harris is number 44. Min-jae processed this. She could see him doing it, the rapid, systematic analysis that was as natural to him as breathing. Connecting dots. Building the larger picture from the fragments she'd provided. Someone is manufacturing cardiac events, he said slowly. Using hospitals as the delivery mechanism. Targeting specific individuals. Yes. This isn't opportunistic. This is a weapon. Systematic. Organized. With a distribution network sophisticated enough to operate across multiple hospitals without detection. Yes. And you've been documenting it. Alone. For 14 months. Yes. He looked at her. Really looked, with an expression Gloria had seen only a handful of times in their relationship. Something between admiration and fear. Gloria Honnett, he said quietly. You are the most dangerous person I have ever met. I'm a nurse who noticed something wrong and couldn't let it go. You're a woman who single-handedly built a case that would destroy an assassination operation. He reached for her hand. And you did it while working 16-hour shifts and pretending to be invisible. Invisibility is a tool. I used it. The way I use information. Exactly the way you use information. They looked at each other. Two people who had built their entire lives on the same principle, the power of being underestimated, recognizing each other fully for the first time. So, what do we do? Min-jae asked. We use Stacey Harris. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Stacey had just committed a documented assault against Gloria. That gave Gloria leverage, the threat of legal consequences, of public exposure, of the kind of scandal that would destroy a military family's reputation. But Gloria didn't want legal consequences. She wanted information. Stacey is scared, Gloria explained. Not just of the assault charge. She's scared because her husband is dying, and she knows he has secrets. Big secrets. The kind that don't disappear when someone dies, they get discovered. Investigated. Prosecuted. So, she's already looking for a way out. She's looking for a way to survive. And I can be that way. Or I can be the thing that destroys her. The choice is hers. Min-jae tilted his head. You want to give her the choice yourself. I want her to come to me. Voluntarily. Believing that cooperation is her only option. Gloria's expression was calm. Calculated. Not because of you. Because of me. You don't want me involved. I want you in the background. Visible enough that Stacey knows you exist, that the threat is real. But not in a room. Not making the demands. That has to come from me. Why? Because Stacey will never respect a man who threatens her. She's been dealing with powerful men her entire life. Her father, her husband, every man in her social circle. She knows how to manipulate them. Play them. Wait for them out. Gloria leaned forward. But she has never had a woman she couldn't look down on actually look back up. And that's what terrifies her. Min-jae studied her for a long moment. Then smiled. Small, genuine. The smile that was only ever for Gloria. You're brilliant, he said. I'm patient. There's a difference. Not in my experience. Gloria has been secretly investigating manufactured cardiac deaths for 14 months. She's found 43 suspicious cases. And instead of letting Min-jae destroy Stacey directly, she's going to use Stacey as an information source. Subscribe right now because this black nurse is about to run an intelligence operation so smooth it makes the Korean Mafia boss look like a student. The real power in this story was never who you thought it was. I approached Stacey Harris on day 2. Not in the hospital. Not in a location that could be monitored or recorded beyond the cameras I'd already identified. I found her at a coffee shop 3 blocks from St. Catherine's, a place where hospital staff went to decompress, where the ambient noise provided cover for conversation, where Stacey would feel slightly more in control than she would on my territory. She was on her 3rd cup of coffee when I sat down across from her. Stacey looked up, saw me, saw the bruise, still vivid, impossible to miss even through the careful makeup I'd applied. Something flickered across her face. Not guilt, recognition. The recognition of someone who understood that a confrontation was coming and had been preparing for it since the moment she walked out of room 714. You want money, Stacey said flatly.
Fine.
How much? I don't want money. Then what? I set my phone on the table between us. Screen up, showing a single text message from Min-jae's number, which Thomas had flagged in Thomas's file compilation. Stacey would recognize the name if she was connected to the general's world. And she was. The message read simply, Gloria Honnet is under my protection. Stacey's face went white. Not dramatically. Not the way it happens in movies, a sudden gasp, a hand to the chest. It was quieter than that. A slow draining of color that started at her hairline and moved down, like watching someone's certainty dissolve in real time. That's, Stacey's voice came out then. That's not real. It is. You don't, Min-jae Kim doesn't.
He does.
We're engaged. I kept my voice level. Conversational. The same tone I used when explaining medication schedules to anxious families. And he knows exactly what you did to me last night. He knows your name, your husband's name, your address, your children's school. Your mother's assisted living facility in Connecticut. Stacy's hand trembled around her coffee cup. What do you want? She whispered. Information. About your husband. About his business dealings. About the people he works with and the money he moves and the network he's built over the past 6 years. I held her gaze, steady and unblinking. Everything, Stacy. I don't know anything about Roberts. You moved money for him. Zurich. 2 years of transfers through a financial advisor named Henrik Larsson. I watched the precise moment Stacy understood that or rather, Min Jae's organization, had already been inside her financial life.
You know everything.
The question is whether you tell me voluntarily, or whether I let Min Jae handle it his way. And if I cooperate, the assault charge disappears. The bruise heals. We never speak of this again. Your family stays intact. And if I don't, I didn't answer that.
I didn't need to.
The silence said everything. Stacy looked at the phone on the table, at Min Jae's name on the screen, at the bruise on my face that she had put there, the bruise that had, unknowingly, given me leverage she could never have imagined. Okay, she said. Her voice was barely audible. Okay, I'll talk. She talked for 3 hours that first session. Not everything, not at first. She started carefully, offering surface-level details. Names of business partners. General descriptions of meetings. The kind of information that sounded cooperative but revealed nothing truly dangerous. I let her do it. Didn't push. Didn't challenge. Because I was watching something more important than what she was telling me. I was watching how she told it. Stacy Harris had spent decades in the world of military wives, a world built on performance, on presenting the correct face to the correct audience, on knowing exactly what to reveal and what to protect. She was skilled at it.
Practiced.
But underneath the skill, I could see the cracks.
Fear.
Not just Min Jae. Of something deeper. Something that had been eating at her long before I sat down across from her in this coffee shop. There are people, Stacy said during the second hour, her voice dropping lower, that Robert doesn't talk about. Ever. Not even to me. But I've seen the communications late at night, when he thinks I'm asleep. Encrypted. Heavy encryption, the kind that requires specialized software. Who are these people? I don't know their names. But I know they scare him. Stacy wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in the world. Robert Harris has never been afraid of anything in his life. Not combat. Not the military. Not anything. Until he started working with these people. When did the fear start? About 2 years ago. Around the same time the money increased significantly. Stacy looked at me with an expression I hadn't expected. Something almost desperate to be believed. Gloria, I know what you think of me. I know what kind of person hits a nurse in a hospital. And you're right to think so. But I need you to understand, I'm not just afraid of Min Jae Kim. Then who are you afraid of? The people who are going to kill my husband. The words landed in the space between us like stones dropped into still water. You think the heart attack. I think Robert's heart attack was not an accident. Stacy's voice cracked. The first genuine emotion I'd seen from her, raw, undisguised terror. And I think whoever did it is going to come for everyone connected to him.
Including me.
Including my children. I sat with that for a moment, not reacting.
Processing.
Then, tell me everything you know about the money. Every detail. Every name. Every location. Stacy nodded. And for the next hour, she did. Dr. Kevin Drake had been asking questions for months. Not loudly. Not in ways that drew attention. Drake was methodical, the kind of doctor who noticed anomalies in data the way a musician notices a wrong note in a symphony. Quietly. Instinctively. With a certainty that didn't require proof to feel true. He'd flagged General Harris's cardiac event within the first hour of admission. The presentation was a textbook, too textbook. The kind of perfect clinical picture that, in Drake's experience, occasionally indicated something other than a natural event. He hadn't escalated his concerns. Not yet. Not without evidence. I approached him on day 4. Not with the leverage I'd used on Stacy. Drake wasn't someone who responded to threats or pressure. He was someone who responded to evidence. I brought him evidence. Found him in his office at 5:30 a.m. He was always there early, always had been, the kind of doctor who lived at the hospital more than at home. Papers spread across his desk. Harris's chart open on his computer. A half-finished cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Dr. Drake. I stood in the doorway. I need to show you something. He looked up, studied me. The bruise on my cheek, fading now but still visible. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Understanding.
Come in, he said.
I sat across from his desk and laid out my files. Not all of them. Not the ones connected to Min-jae or the broader investigation. Just the medical documentation. 43 cases. Cardiac events that didn't match risk profiles. Chemical markers that repeated across patients who had no biological connection to each other. Drake read in silence for 20 minutes. When he looked up, his face had the particular color of someone who has just realized something terrible is true. You built this yourself, he said. Over 14 months. Yes. Alone. Yes. Gloria, he set down the files. Removed his glasses. These chemical markers. You identified them in standard blood work. In the panels I had access to. I'm not a chemist, Dr. Drake. I'm a nurse with a pre-med background who noticed a pattern and followed it as far as I could. I leaned forward. But you have access to advanced toxicology. The kind of testing that goes beyond standard protocols. If what I'm seeing is real, if these cardiac events are being manufactured, you can prove it. Drake looked at the files again. At 43 cases of impossible coincidence, laid out in neat, careful documentation. General Harris, he said. You think he's case 44. I think he's 44. And I think whoever manufactured his cardiac event did it deliberately. Specifically. For a reason. What reason? I don't know yet. But Stacy Harris, his wife, believes the heart attack was meant to kill him. Slowly enough to extract information first. Drake went very still. Extract information, he repeated. Someone is using manufactured cardiac events as an interrogation tool. Keeping the patient alive just long enough to get what they need, then letting them die. I held his gaze. Dr. Drake, I need your help. I need you to run the advanced panels on General Harris. Off the record. Quietly. If the compound is there, if this is what I think it is, we'll have proof. The silence stretched. Then Drake nodded. Once. Decisive. Give me 48 hours, he said. And Gloria, he stopped her at the door. Whoever is behind this. They have resources. Reach. The kind of infrastructure that doesn't tolerate investigation. I know. Be careful. I am Dr. Drake. I smiled, small, tired, the smile of a woman who had been careful for 14 months. More careful than you know. Someone is using manufactured heart attacks as an interrogation weapon. They're keeping patients alive just long enough to extract information and then letting them die. And Gloria has been tracking this for 14 months. Subscribe because Dr. Drake just agreed to run the tests, and when those results come back in 48 hours, everything Gloria has suspected is going to be confirmed, and the people behind this are going to realize someone has been watching them the entire time. Meanwhile, Min-jae's operation against Stacy Harris moved forward with surgical precision. Not publicly. Not dramatically. The way Min-jae did everything. Quietly, invisibly, through systems and leverage that left no fingerprints. On day 3, Stacy's financial advisor in Zurich received an anonymous communication. Not a threat. Simply information. Specific, detailed, devastating information about the advisor's own illegal activities. Information that made it clear. Cooperate with a new set of instructions, or this information reaches the Swiss banking authority. The advisor cooperated. On day 5, Stacy's closest social connection, a woman named Barbara Whitfield, wife of a retired admiral who served as the informal social gatekeeper of their military wives' circle, received a phone call from an unknown number. The caller identified themselves as representing a nonprofit that had evidence of Barbara's husband's involvement in a charity fraud scheme. The evidence was real. The choice was simple: step aside from certain social obligations or face exposure. Barbara stepped aside. On day 7, the general's personal attorney received a visit from Thomas Co. Thomas didn't threaten,
Didn't demand.
simply informed the attorney that his client's offshore accounts had been identified, documented, and were being compiled into a package that would be delivered to federal prosecutors unless the attorney chose to cooperate with an alternative arrangement. The attorney chose to cooperate. Each move was precise. Each move was designed to tighten the net around Stacey Harris, not to destroy her immediately, but to isolate her. To remove every support structure, every connection, every person she might turn to for help or escape. By day 8, Stacey Harris was completely alone. Gloria watched this happen from the outside. Min-jae reported each move, not asking permission, but keeping Gloria informed. A partnership. The kind that required trust built over months of quiet understanding. Is it too much? Gloria asked on night 8. They were in Min-jae's apartment. Gloria had just finished a 12-hour shift.
Her body ached.
Her mind was running on caffeine and adrenaline and the particular kind of focus that comes from knowing you're close to something enormous. It's exactly enough, Min-jae said. She's isolated.
Scared.
But functional. Which is what we need. What do we need her for now? The names above the general. The people Stacey described. The ones Harris was afraid of. Min-jae pulled up a document on his laptop. Thomas's compilation. Names, connections, financial trails. We've identified 3 of them. But there's one more. Someone at the top. The person who actually controls the operation. Stacey knows who it is? Stacey has heard the name.
Once.
In a phone call she wasn't supposed to overhear. Min-jae looked at Gloria. But she's not going to tell us voluntarily. Not that name. That's the one piece of information she's still holding back. The one name that, if revealed, would make everything else irrelevant. So, we need to make her afraid enough to give it up. We need to make her understand that holding it back is more dangerous than releasing it. Min-jae paused. Which is where you come in. I went back to the coffee shop on day 9. Stacey was already there when I arrived. Sitting in the same chair. Same position. But different, diminished somehow. The polished armor she'd worn that first day was gone. Not just cracked. Removed. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Which she probably hadn't. They got to Barbara, Stacey said before I even sat down.
Her voice was flat. Defeated.
And Henrik. And my lawyer. Yes. Min-jae Kim dismantled my entire world in 9 days. He's very efficient. Stacey looked at me. At the bruise on my face. Fading now. Yellowing at the edges. But still visible. Still a mark she had put there. I did this to myself, she said quietly. By hitting you.
Yes.
You did. Is there anything left? Anything I can hold on to? There's one thing. I leaned forward. Kept my voice low. Intimate. The way you speak to someone when you're offering them their last chance. There's a name, Stacey. A name you heard.
Once.
In a phone call you weren't supposed to hear. Stacey's eyes went wide. How do you know about that? Because I know everything you know. And I know everything you don't know yet. I held her gaze. That name is the only leverage you have left. The only thing connecting you to the people who are going to kill your husband, the people who, if they decide you're a liability, will kill you too. So, I should give it to you. You should give it to me. Because once that name is in my hands, in Min-jae's hands, those people lose their power. Over you. Over your children. Over everyone connected to General Harris. I paused. Or you can hold on to it. And hope they don't come for you, before we find it ourselves. Stacey stared at me for a long, long time. Then she said the name. One word. a surname, and everything Gloria had been building for 14 months clicked into place. Dr. Drake called at 4:17 a.m. on day 10. Gloria was in her apartment. I couldn't sleep. Sitting on the couch with her laptop open, cross-referencing the names Stacy had given her with everything Thomas had compiled. "You're right," Drake said. His voice was the flattest Gloria had ever heard it, the particular flatness of a man who has just confirmed something he desperately wished was wrong. The compound is synthetic. Manufactured. Identical chemical signature across General Harris and at least 12 other patients I was able to test from archived samples. 12. 12 confirmed from the samples I had access to. But Gloria, the compound is sophisticated. Pharmaceutical grade. This isn't something developed in a basement lab. This requires significant research infrastructure, quality control, clinical testing. A pharmaceutical company. A specific one. I cross-referenced the compound's molecular structure with FDA databases. Drake paused. It matches a research compound developed by Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a company that, according to public records, specializes in cardiovascular treatments. Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Gloria wrote it down. Cross-referenced it immediately with Thomas's files. The connection appeared within seconds. Meridian Pharmaceuticals was owned by Richard Vance. Richard Vance was the name Stacy Harris had given her. The pieces locked together with the quiet, devastating certainty of a puzzle that had always been solvable, if someone had been patient enough, invisible enough, and persistent enough to find every piece. "Dr. Drake," Gloria said, "I need you to do one more thing." "What?" "I need you to document everything. Officially. On the record. Your tests, your findings, your methodology. Everything that proves the compound exists and where it came from." "Gloria, if I do that, if this goes official, I know. The people behind this will know someone is coming for them. Which means they'll move. Cover their tracks. Possibly eliminate anyone who can testify." "Yes." Gloria's voice was steady.
Calm.
The voice of someone who had been planning for this moment for 14 months. "Which is why we need to move first." Gloria told Min-jae everything that night. Richard Vance. Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The manufactured compound. Drake's documentation. Min-jae listened with the same absolute stillness he always brought to critical intelligence. When Gloria finished, he was quiet for a full minute. "Richard Vance," he said finally. "I know that name."
How?
"He approached me 8 months ago. Wanted to expand his distribution network. Offered a partnership, his pharmaceutical infrastructure combined with my information networks." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "I declined. And then what happened?" "And then one of my operations was compromised. A federal raid. Someone fed law enforcement exactly the right information at exactly the right time to shut down a significant part of my business." Min-jae looked at Gloria. "I assumed it was retaliation. A warning from a competitor. I never connected it to Vance. Until now." "Until now." Min-jae stood.
Paced.
The controlled energy of a man whose mind was moving faster than his body could follow. "Gloria, Vance isn't just running an assassination program. He's running a monopoly. Using manufactured cardiac events to eliminate anyone who threatens his pharmaceutical business, competitors, regulators, government officials who might investigate. And anyone who refuses to cooperate with him. Like you. Like me. Like General Harris, eventually, when Harris became a liability instead of an asset." Min-jae stopped pacing. Looked at Gloria with an expression she hadn't seen before, something close to awe. "You found all of this? 14 months. Alone. In a hospital." "I found the pattern." Drake confirmed the science. "Stacy gave us the name. Thomas compiled the connections." Gloria shrugged. "It was a team effort. It was your vision, your patience, your invisibility." Min-jae crossed the room, took her face in his hands, gently, carefully, avoiding the fading bruise. "Gloria Hunnett, You are extraordinary. I'm tired, she said. And we have work to do. The operation against Richard Vance took exactly 72 hours. Not because it was simple, because Gloria had been preparing for it for 14 months. Every piece of evidence she'd collected, every patient file, every chemical marker, every documented anomaly, had been stored in multiple secure locations. When the time came to act, the package was ready. Min Jae's organization compiled the final documentation, financial records connecting Vance to the General's Arms network, Thomas's intelligence on Meridian Pharmaceuticals' operational structure, Drake's medical proof of the manufactured compound. The package was delivered simultaneously to the FBI, the FDA, the Department of Justice, and 2 investigative journalists Gloria had spent months vetting. It landed on a Monday morning. By noon, federal agents were executing search warrants at Meridian Pharmaceuticals headquarters. By 3 p.m., Richard Vance was in custody. By evening, the story was on every major news outlet in the country. Gloria watched it unfold from St. Catharines. She was working, had insisted on working, on being in the hospital where it had all started, where she had first noticed the pattern that led to everything. Rachel found her at the nurse's station, watching the news on her phone between patient rounds. Gloria. Rachel's voice was strange.
Odd.
Are you seeing this? I'm seeing it. A pharmaceutical company manufacturing heart attacks. Using hospitals as Rachel stopped. I looked at Gloria. Really looked. At the fading bruise. At the calm, steady expression. At the woman she'd worked beside for 4 years and never fully understood. Gloria. Rachel said slowly. This is you, isn't it? Gloria didn't answer. Just smiled, small, tired, the same smile she'd worn in the supply closet on the night Stacey Harris struck her. Be careful what you ask, Gloria said quietly. You might not want to know. Rachel stared at her for a long moment. Then, I already know. I just wanted to hear you say it. Gloria looked back at her phone. At the news coverage. At Richard Vance being led in handcuffs into a federal building, and felt, for the first time in 14 months, like the weight she'd been carrying might actually finally be lifting. General Robert Harris died on Wednesday. Not from the manufactured cardiac event. Dr. Drake had intervened medically once the investigation began, stabilizing the general's condition enough to keep him alive for questioning. Harris died from an infection. Sepsis, complicated by his weakened state. Natural. Ordinary. Almost anticlimactic after everything that had preceded it. Stacey was at his bedside. Gloria wasn't his nurse, had been removed from his care once her role in the investigation became known internally. But she heard about it from Rachel. She held his hand the whole time, Rachel said. Didn't say a word. Didn't cry. Just held his hand and watched. Gloria thought about that image for a long time afterward. A woman who had spent 20 years beside a man she'd helped cover for. Who had slapped a stranger out of fear and desperation. Who had, in the end, given up the name that brought everything crashing down. Stacey Harris wasn't a villain. She was a woman who had been invisible in her own marriage. Invisible in a different way than Gloria, but invisible nonetheless. A woman whose only power had been cruelty, because cruelty was the only form of control she'd ever been given. Gloria understood that better than most. The congressional hearing took place 6 weeks after Vance's arrest. Gloria Honnett sat at the witness table. Not behind a screen. Not with her identity concealed. In full view of the cameras and the senators and the nation watching at home. She wore a simple white blouse. Dark pants. No jewelry except the ring on her left hand, the engagement ring Min Jae had given her, which she wore openly now for the first time. Min Jae was in the gallery. 7th row. Right side. Dressed like any other businessman attending a public hearing. Invisible in plain sight, the way he'd always operated. Gloria didn't look at him during her testimony.
Didn't need to.
She could feel him there, steady, present, the fixed point around which the rest of her life had organized itself. She told the story. All of it. The patterns she'd noticed. The 14 months of documentation. the chemical signatures. The 43 confirmed cases that had led her to General Harris, to Stacy, to Richard Vance, to Meridian Pharmaceuticals. She did not mention Min-jae Kim. Did not mention his organization's role in compiling and distributing the evidence that had brought Vance down. Some things needed to stay invisible to keep working. But Gloria was done hiding. "I want to be clear about something," she said, looking directly into the camera that was broadcasting her testimony to millions of people. "The reason I was able to find this, the reason I was able to investigate for 14 months without detection, is because no one thought to look at me. I'm a nurse. A black nurse. I move through the world, and people look through me. They see a uniform, a function, background." She paused. Let the silence breathe. That invisibility saved 43 lives. It allowed me to document an assassination program that had been operating for over a decade. It gave me 14 months to build a case that brought down one of the most sophisticated criminal operations in this country's history. Another pause. But invisibility shouldn't be the only way someone like me can change the world. The system that made me invisible, that made it possible for an entire assassination program to operate inside hospitals without anyone noticing, that system needs to change. Not because invisibility isn't powerful. It is. But because no one should have to be invisible to be heard. The room was silent. Then slowly, applause. Gloria and Min-jae married on a Saturday in October. Small ceremony. A garden behind a restaurant in the city, where Min-jae had grown up. Autumn light. Fallen leaves. The kind of quiet beauty that didn't require decoration or spectacle. Rachel was there, maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony and pretending she wasn't. Dr. Drake attended, slightly uncomfortable in formal wear but genuinely glad to be included. Thomas Seo stood as Min-jae's witness, the only person in Min-jae's world who knew the complete story. Gloria's mother flew in from Atlanta, watched the ceremony with sharp, loving eyes. Afterward, she cornered Min-jae near the dessert table. "You take care of my daughter," she said. "Not a request." "Yes, ma'am," Min-jae said, and meant it more than he'd meant almost anything in his life. On their wedding night, they sat on the balcony of the hotel. The city spread below them, lights and shadows and all the secrets it kept. "Do you regret becoming visible?" Min-jae asked. Gloria thought about it. About 14 months of invisibility, of watching, of being the woman no one noticed, documenting the deaths no one questioned. About the night Stacy Harris struck her, the moment that forced her into the light.
"No," she said.
"I don't regret it. Even knowing what it cost. Especially knowing what it cost." She leaned against him. "Invisibility was my greatest weapon, Min-jae. It let me see everything. Do everything. Build a case that changed the world." She paused. "But it was lonely. And I spent so long choosing invisibility that I forgot I could also choose to be seen. And now I'm seen." She looked at the city, at all its hidden lives and buried truths. "And I think the most dangerous people aren't the ones with power or money or criminal empires. What are they? They're the ones who spent their whole lives invisible, who learned to see everything while no one was watching them, and who finally decided, on their own terms at their own time, to step into the light." Min-jae looked at his wife. This woman who had walked into a congressional hearing and told the truth to a nation, who had spent 14 months building a case alone, in the dark, with nothing but observation and patience and an absolute refusal to look away from what was wrong, who had been struck by a stranger in a hospital and turned that single act of cruelty into the catalyst for the most significant investigation of the decade. "Stacy Harris has no idea," he said quietly, "what she started that night." Gloria smiled.
"Small.
Tired.
Real."
"No," she said. "She doesn't." And somewhere in the city below them, in hospitals and offices and the quiet spaces where power moved unseen, Gloria Hannett's eyes were already watching, seeing everything, waiting.
The end.
They saw a nurse, They saw scrubs and a badge and tired eyes and a woman they could look through without consequence. They saw nobody. And that invisibility, that assumption that Gloria Honnett was background, scenery, a function rather than a person, was the most catastrophic mistake any of them ever made. Because invisible people see everything. They document everything. They wait. And when they finally decide to be seen, on their own terms, in their own time, for their own reasons, the world doesn't just notice them. The world changes. Stacey Harris slapped a nurse. She thought she was putting someone in her place. She was actually lighting the fuse on a bomb that had been building for 14 months. The most powerful force in the world isn't violence or wealth or fear. It's the quiet, patient, devastating power of someone who has been invisible their entire life finally deciding to be seen.
I'm Gloria Honnett.
I'm a nurse, and I see everything. A black nurse spent 14 months secretly investigating manufactured cardiac deaths, brought down a pharmaceutical assassination program, testified before Congress, and married a Korean Mafia boss, all because a general's wife slapped her in a hospital? Gloria Honnett is the most quietly devastating protagonist ever written. Subscribe because next week's story features a woman who discovers her husband's charity foundation is actually funding something dark and twisted, and she has exactly 72 hours to decide whether to expose him or disappear. It's going to be brutal. See you there. Real talk. Was Gloria right to keep her investigation secret from Min Jae for 14 months? Or should she have trusted him from the beginning? A. She was right. Invisibility and independence were her greatest weapons, and telling him would have compromised everything. B. She was wrong. Trusting the person you love matters more than strategy, no matter how brilliant the plan. C. Both. It was genius and it was incredibly risky, and it only worked because Gloria is exactly who she is. D. None of this matters because a nurse single-handedly exposed a decade-long biological assassination program while working triple shifts and planning a wedding, and that is the most powerful thing I have ever read. Drop your answer below. And more importantly, do you think Stacey Harris deserved immunity for her cooperation? Or should she have faced consequences for looking the other way for 22 years while her husband helped choose who would be murdered? And one more. Gloria choosing to become visible on her own terms, testifying before Congress, wearing Min Jae's ring openly, telling the world exactly who she is. Was that the most satisfying moment in the story? Or did the scene in the coffee shop, where Gloria sat across from Stacey and made her understand exactly how much power she held, hit harder? Sound off. This story proved that the most dangerous people aren't the ones with weapons or wealth or criminal networks. They're the ones who have been invisible long enough to understand exactly how power works and who finally decide to use it.